Get the unmissable news stories of the day.
This is the Beijing Hour.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host.
Shane Bigham with you on this Thursday, April 2nd, 2026. You're listening to the Beijing Hour, coming to you live from the Chinese capital. On today's program, the U.S. President issued a televised address on the Iran war, offering threats but no clear timeline for an end to the conflict. European leaders are defending NATO after Trump said he might pull the U.S. out of the military alliance. And Thursday is World Autism Day, and experts in China explain how the country is helping people with that condition. In business, China's Commerce Ministry speaks on strengthening ties with the U.S. In sports, Shanghai ends its long drought in the Chinese Women's Volleyball League. In culture and entertainment, a holiday weekend in China could be a record setter at the box office. Now the day's top stories. U.S. President Donald Trump has addressed Americans on the U.S. and Israel's war against Iran, now in its second month. In his speech, he offered no clear timeline for ending the conflict and threatened to bomb Iran back into the Stone Ages. Nick Harper has more from Washington.
It was a victory speech from the US president, who was justifying why this military action was needed, but also listing the objectives that he feels he has achieved over the course of the last 5 weeks. He spoke about the fact that the Navy, in his words, is gone, that the Iranian Air Force is in ruins, and that most of the Iranian leadership is now dead. He also spoke about the fact that he does not believe Iran will ever be able to obtain a nuclear weapon, and also talked about the extent of the losses that Iran has suffered during this conflict. He said never in the history of warfare has an enemy suffered such clear and devastating large-scale losses in a matter of weeks. It was a tone from the US president which really portrayed confidence, but also a feeling that he was in the right. Let's listen to what else he had to say.
Tonight, I'm pleased to say that these core strategic objectives are nearing completion. Those beautiful B-2 bombers performed magnificently. We totally obliterated those nuclear sites. Thanks to the progress we've made, I can say tonight that we are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly. We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Now, up until now, the US president had been speaking about the 2 to 3 week timeline as being an end to this military campaign. He slightly reframed it during that speech, suggesting a much more military action against Iran over the next 2 to 3 weeks, but not quite spelling out when the end of this conflict would take place. He did say it would happen when he felt all of the objectives had been completed, which is a rather subjective way of looking at this. Certainly no clear timeline from the US president about when all of this will end.
That was Nick Harper on the US president's latest national address on Iran. Following the U.S. president's speech, oil prices climbed sharply, while Asian markets sold off as concerns over geopolitical uncertainty intensify. Brent crude futures jumped as much as 6.4% to more than $107 per barrel, with the WTI rising 6% to 106. AT Global Market says Trump's speech added to market uncertainty, weighing on equities and the dollar, with further downside expected throughout the day. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has said the Iranian people hold no hostility toward the American public. In a letter addressed to Americans, Pezeshkian accused the U.S. government of acting as a proxy for Israel in the ongoing conflict. He said Iran distinguishes between governments and citizens, adding that Iranians bear no ill will toward people in the United States, Europe, or other countries. Meantime, the Iranian military says it's ready for any further U.S. campaigns, including ground operations. Ehsan Kevani has more from central Iran.
Iran's state news agency says the U.S. president didn't offer anything new. He's just repeating himself, and despite all the threats, he hasn't actually managed to achieve what he set out to do. Iranian officials say Trump administration clearly miscalculated the economic impact of this war, especially when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, and now they're looking for a way out and even talking about negotiating with Tehran. Iran says the U.S. and Israel are attacking civilian infrastructure and targeting Iranian officials, which is a clear violation of international law, basically war crimes and state terrorism. Iranian armed forces say they are well prepared for any such scenario. Top military commanders here in Iran have even welcomed the prospect of a U.S. ground operation, claiming they would turn it into a cemetery for American troops if anything like that happens. Iranian commanders add that the country's strategic stockpile, including missiles and drones, are sufficient to sustain and continue the war even for months. In addition to nearly 1 million official personnel in the armed forces in Iran, the besieged paramilitary division has at least 2 million registered members. Iran also reports that over the past few days, 5 million Iranians have volunteered to be mobilized in case of a further escalation if the United States decides to perform a ground operation.
That was Ahsan Kayvani reporting from Iran. Melissa Tefanian, a senior advisor to former Secretary of State Antony Blinken, says Trump's speech has no clear plan and confuses American audiences. Many observers have also shared this view. For more, Lee Dongning spoke with Professor Joseph Mahoney at East China Normal University. He's also the executive director of the International Center for Advanced Political Studies.
I was looking at some of the responses from around Europe to his speech. We've seen similar assessments coming from others. And, you know, as you reported in your lead, and we've seen a majority of Americans saying they're opposed to the war in Iran. No one really understands why he went to war or how he's going to exit. They don't understand why he's spending billions of dollars per day, adding to the U.S. deficit, compounding inflationary pressures, and risking global recession. They don't understand because he promised to avoid these kinds of wars. He promised to get inflation under control. They don't understand because the U.S. is still in a partial government shutdown, adversely affecting the lives of millions of Americans. They don't understand because his global terror policy was deemed illegal by the Supreme Court, and he now must refund the money he collected, but has already spent on record military budgets. And he still hasn't found a solution to the war in Ukraine. So in short, everything is a mess. Nothing is making sense. And these broader failures are intersecting with how everyone is viewing his policies against Iran, which also seem like a massive failure.
Right, and Professor, a key point in Trump's national address this time was preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons, although it's an ability that he claimed has been obliterated by his previous 12-day strike. Let's put the sense, that's what you said, put the sense of logic aside for a moment. Prior to the war, Tehran repeatedly pledged not to pursue them. But now Iran is considering withdrawing from nuclear non-proliferation treaty. Do you think the war has actually pushed Iran closer toward nuclear weapons?
Well, in fact, in his first presidency, Trump destroyed a good deal with Tehran, negotiated by his predecessor and the international community to ensure that Iran would not develop nuclear weapons. Now, he never negotiated in good faith to establish a new deal, but instead pursued policies including assassination, as well as efforts to destroy the Iranian economy to create social instability and encourage regime change. Now, he claimed last year, during previous attacks, to have destroyed completely Iran's nuclear abilities again, which many experts don't believe existed. And then he used these same alleged capabilities again, which experts say never existed, and which he had claimed to have already destroyed, to start this new war, to again claim a few hours ago that he's now obliterated them. So, I think there's some sort of hyper reality or feedback loop here. I'm not really sure how we should assess the justification for this struggle, but I think it's absolutely clear the lesson that many countries have drawn from this is that the best way to avoid getting attacked like this is to have nuclear weapons. And it won't be surprising to anyone if Iran reaches the same conclusion.
That was Professor Joseph Mahoney at East China Normal University. Donald Trump said on social media that Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has asked the United States for a ceasefire, but the Iranian Foreign Ministry later dismissed Trump's claims. Meanwhile, the U.S. military buildup continues in the Middle East despite Trump's mixed signals. Walter Morris has more.
Some recent polls show Trump's approval rating hitting an all-time low. In an interview with Reuters Wednesday, Trump said the U.S. will be out of Iran pretty quickly, but could return if needed. The conflict in Iran is now entering its fifth week. Despite Trump's claims that the war is practically over, thousands of additional U.S. military troops are heading to the region. Tuesday, the aircraft carrier, the USS George H.W. Bush, deployed for the Middle East along with 3 destroyers. That strike group consists of 6,000 sailors. Those troops will join thousands of soldiers from the 82nd Airborne Division who are now arriving. The administration has not said what those troops will do, but members of that division are trained to parachute into hostile territory and secure key airfields. A U.S. Navy ship with about 2,500 Marines recently arrived in the Middle East, and another 2,500 Marines are deploying from California. Tuesday, Trump told reporters that negotiations with Tehran are productive and ongoing. He also repeated previous claims that U.S. forces have severely damaged Iran's military infrastructure and missile production facilities. In a social media post Wednesday, Trump said Iran has asked the U.S. for a ceasefire, but a spokesperson for Iran's foreign ministry says that is false and baseless.
That was Walter Morris reporting. Coming up, European leaders are defending NATO after the U.S. threatens to pull out of the military alliance.
You've been listening to programs from CGTN Radio.
CGTN Radio.
We invite you to visit us online for more audio, pictures, and in-depth reports. At radio.cgtn.com, you can access a wide range of programs and find your favorite news, talk, features, entertainment shows, and podcasts. Hear the difference with CGTN Radio.
12 minutes past the hour. European leaders have defended NATO after President Donald Trump threatened to pull the United States out of the alliance. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says he will act in his country's interests.
Firstly, NATO is the single most effective military alliance the world has ever seen. And it has kept us safe for many decades, and we are fully committed to NATO. Secondly, that whatever the pressure on me and others, whatever the noise, I'm going to act in the British national interest in all the decisions that I make. And that's why I've been absolutely clear that this is not our war, and we're not going to get dragged into it.
German government spokesperson Stefan Cornelius has also reaffirmed his country's commitment to NATO.
You are quite right to say that this is not the first time he has done this. And as it is a recurring phenomenon, you can probably judge the consequences for yourselves. It is not my role here to comment on the words of the American president. I would simply like to state on behalf of the German government that we naturally remain committed to NATO.
In response to Trump's recent criticism, French President Emmanuel Macron said France will continue to stay out of the war while urging major powers to remain credible.
It is absolutely true that France, which was not consulted and is not part of the military offensive launched by the United States and Israel, is not taking part in it. But this is nothing new. It has been the case from day one, so it should come as no surprise. A major power like France must remain credible. But it is very important to understand that reasonable powers must remain credible so as not to leave the field entirely to unreasonable powers or those that operate outside any framework.
This comes as President Trump called France unhelpful for not allowing Israel-bound planes to fly over its territory, warning that Washington would remember this act. Tensions have flared once again between the U.S. and other NATO members after Trump criticized them for what he described as insufficient support for the U.S. war on Iran.
We've had some very good allies over there. We've had some very bad allies in NATO. And, you know, we spend trillions of dollars on NATO. And when we need them, which we never do, we didn't need them here either. The last thing I needed was NATO stepping in our way because they're a paper tiger.
And Trump repeated his threat to pull the U.S. out of the 77-year-old alliance. European members have rejected his request to send ships to unblock the Strait of Hormuz or allow U.S. military flights over their airspace. The U.S. president has been sharply critical of NATO for failing to agree to his request on several occasions over the past few weeks.
NATO's making a very foolish mistake, and I've long said that, I wonder whether or not NATO would ever be there for us. So this was a great test because we don't need them, but they should have been there. One thing we're very disappointed, I'll say it publicly, we're very disappointed with NATO because NATO has done absolutely nothing.
A former NATO official has defended the alliance following Trump's harsh words. Jamie Shea, former NATO Deputy Assistant Secretary General for Emerging Security Challenges, says Trump's comments are unjustified as the U.S. attacked Iran without consulting NATO.
Does not consult NATO in advance. It does not lay down any specific objectives or a plan. It does not in advance ask the NATO member states to provide any kind of capabilities, and it doesn't have a mandate in international law. So NATO seems to be, if you like, the whipping boy on this occasion of President Trump's sort of dissatisfaction with contributions from the Europeans. But if those contributions from the Europeans were so important to the Americans before they launched the operation, then why did they not make a much more concerted and organised attempt to consult NATO allies and get that sort of put in place in advance? All I can add is that since President Trump has come back to office, NATO has done all of the things that Trump has asked NATO to do. Spend more money on defence, give more support to Ukraine, take over various former command positions vacated by the United States, and so NATO is really on the receiving end of a kind of criticism which I feel is completely unjustified and unwarranted on this occasion.
That was former senior NATO official Jamie Shea hitting back at Trump's comments against the alliance. A European Parliament member has criticized European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen over her stance on the Middle East. Sitting down with CGTN's Jamie Owen, Mark Batenia says the EU should be clear on its principles and act upon them.
Her stance has been very pro-United States, very pro-Israel. That is a disaster, I would say, for Europe, because once again, that completely, why would people in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America give any credibility to the European Union if it cannot stand up for the things it claims to stand for, right? But then you also have, fortunately, political debate, and you have people more towards the left of the hemicycle that are saying, listen, guys, we cannot have this hypocrisy. We cannot follow U.S. imperialism. We cannot ourselves be complicit in funding, for example, a genocide against the Palestinians, or in closing our eyes when UN peacekeepers are bombed in Lebanon by the Israelis. So you have this debate, but it very much depends basically on how people on the streets mobilize, because we as parliamentarians obviously feel the pressure from public opinion.
Ursula von der Leyen calls for peace. Is anyone listening?
No, I don't think they are right now. And the reason, of course, is that if you, bandwagon behind other countries, and in this case, the United States, then there's no reason for other countries to take the EU seriously. If the EU wants to be taken seriously, it should, on the one hand, be clear on its principles and act upon those. And on the other hand, say, we will diversify our relations. We stand for multilateralism. We stand for multipolarity. And we will intensify our relations with other countries, with, India, China, Brazil, South Africa. We will not just be, a junior partner to U.S. imperialism. And that is clearly a choice that Ursula von der Leyen today has not made, and the EU establishment is yet to make. But there is, I do believe, a strong pressure coming from public opinion to say, listen, this war on Iran, this illegal war on Iran, these massacres in Lebanon and in Palestine, these are not our wars. We do not stand for them, and they're not in our interests, because, energy prices are going up and ordinary Europeans are paying for that.
That was European Parliament member Mark Patenha sharing his thoughts on the EU's position on American foreign policy. China has urged that military actions in the Strait of Hormuz should stop immediately. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said the issues must be resolved through dialogue. Mao said the root cause of the disruption to navigation in the strait is the illegal military actions of the U.S. and Israel against Iran. She said the security and smooth passage of international waterways can be safeguarded only by ceasing hostilities and achieving peace and stability in the Gulf region. Mao urged all parties to work together to de-escalate the situation and prevent regional instability from having a greater impact on the global economy and energy security. The spokesperson also added that China is willing to continue to play its role in restoring peace and stability in the Gulf region and the Middle East. The World Food Program warns that conflict linked to Iran is disrupting critical food aid to Sudan and beyond. The agency says gas, oil, and fertilizers are stuck in the Persian Gulf due to the war, while urgent food aid is facing severe delays. WFP official Karine Fleischer says the aid is being rerouted along Africa's Cape of Good Hope, adding weeks and up to 25% in costs.
Mothers and children are malnourished, and they need this vitamin and mineral-enriched food. We produce this in Pakistan as one of the countries. That is now stuck there.
The WFP says about 70,000 metric tons of food aid have been affected. Meanwhile, deliveries to Afghanistan are also disrupted with complex land routes, adding weeks and higher costs, though aid agencies say they remain committed to reaching those in need. U.S. President Donald Trump says a ceasefire will be considered once the Strait of Hormuz is reopened. However, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps says the strait will remain closed to Iran's enemies. Yellow App Daffod has more.
One of the main impacts of the conflict is access to and from the Gulf. The Strait of Hormuz is officially open, but has effectively been closed to the majority of ships. Some tankers and cargo ships are allowed to navigate this strategic route, as well as an estimated 20% of the world's oil and gas exported from this region. There's also urea for fertilizers, helium for semiconductor chips, and aluminium. The war is having a major impact on the global economy, and costs are increasing. Shipping from countries like China, India, Pakistan, Thailand and Malaysia, for instance, are negotiating with Iran to be exempt from any attack. Iranian authorities have suggested it may require a toll to be paid for safe passage. Otherwise, it has missiles, drones, armed vessels and sea mines to deter others whether the war continues or not. And it's easy to control the Strait of Hormuz as it is so narrow. It's only 33 kilometers wide and has just two sea lanes, two shipping lanes, both in Omani territorial waters. And Iran has asked some ships to exit Hormuz by sailing into its territorial area before traveling on to other destinations. Iran is flexing its military and political muscle because of the proximity of national and maritime borders despite this conflict. And as well as ending attacks against Iran, the current authorities say they want security guarantees to avoid any resumption of fighting, sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, and controversially, maybe to be allowed to raise toll for each vessel using the waterway. Now, that potentially could raise tens of billions of dollars. Iran is also demanding financial compensation and reparations, and it wants a comprehensive ceasefire in Iran, but also where Iranian-sponsored groups operate throughout the Middle East region, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon. Since February the 28th, Iran has threatened to hit any ship in the strait and uses bases on the mainland, as well as on a string of islands in the Gulf to retain its control. President Trump has intimated that some kind of military action could be carried out by US Marines and paratroopers, and thousands of troops are still being sent to the region. Mr. Trump has identified Karg Island as a potential target. It's roughly 660 kilometers to the northwest of Hormuz and 25 kilometers offshore. It's a vital port for Iran to export its oil, and it has a tanker jetty, storage, and an airfield on the island. A second potential flashpoint is the south of Yemen, the Bab el-Mandeb waterway into the Red Sea. Now, that could block sea traffic heading north to the Suez Canal. The Houthis of Yemen, who have close ties with Iran, may decide to follow the same tactics they used in 2023 during the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza and close this shipping route as well.
That was Yellow App Daffod reporting. Coming up, Chinese experts explain some of the country's efforts to support people with autism.
Discover the realities and responses to our changing climate with Climate Watch. Uncover critical issues such as the Masai Mara's disrupted wildebeest migration and the drop in the Panama Canal's water levels. Delve into solutions for a sustainable future. Tune in to Climate Watch on your favorite podcast platform. Become more eco-conscious and take action to protect our planet.
At 25 past the hour, Thursday is World Autism Awareness Day. This year it emphasizes the dignity and value of all autistic people as part of our shared future. The World Health Organization says autism ranks among the world's top 10 neurological conditions causing health loss. The special date on April 2nd was designated by the UN General Assembly back in 2007. And since then it's moved beyond raising awareness to advancing acceptance and inclusion. A top Chinese autism expert says parents should act fast and seek professional guidance if they notice developmental delays in their children, such as in language or social skills. Dr. Jia Meixiang of Peking University 6th Hospital says early intervention is vital for any child with such delays, not just autism. She says it buys precious time during critical early years. A company in China is using artificial intelligence to make education more accessible for children with autism. Chen Mengfei visited a school in central China to see how the technology is helping to bridge the gap.
In a quiet corner of Pingdingshan, it's class time for 4-year-old Lingling. While most children her age can be already quite chatty, Lingling still struggles to pronounce basic syllables. Difficulty with speech is just one of many challenges for Lingling, who has autism spectrum disorder. She is one of millions in China. Like so many others, the condition is deeply frustrating and often leaves her on the margins of society. Now Lingling takes lessons at this local autism rehabilitation center. The exact cause of autism and a quote-unquote cure remains a mystery. But therapies like this have proven helpful, and lately her family has noticed a significant change.
She used to hate these classes. She would cry throughout the 30-minute session. But since she started taking this new class, I've noticed she really enjoys it. She's happy.
The new class is called Rise AI, named after the software the school recently adopted. Lingling's teacher Ren Xiaojuan uses it to plan lessons, track progress, and get new ideas. Even with 20 years of experience, Ren Xiaojuan is amazed by the AI's guidance.
The curriculum designed by Rice AI has a clear focus. That is, we shouldn't teach children the way we train animals. They should be treated as people. The teaching happens through games and activities, and children make rapid progress.
Even in this digital age, the knowledge gap between smaller cities and top-tier cities can be stark. More than 1,000 kilometers from Pingdingshan, where Lingling and teacher Ren live, is the team behind Rise AI in Shenzhen, China's Silicon Valley. The company operates a nationwide network of autism intervention centers. To train its teachers, it has experts like Dr. Zheng Tian.
My official title is the board-certified behavior analysis at the doctoral level.
She's one of just 3 senior supervisors at the company with that credential. Across China, specialists at this level are even more rare compared to millions in need. The company has long wanted to capture and scale the expertise of people like Zheng, but lacked the technology, until the arrival of the AI boom.
When DeepSeek came out, we realized that we finally had access to a really strong open source model. In addition, companies like Amazon provided the technical support we needed.
All was in place, and the final piece of the puzzle was the company's own invaluable data. Real-world records teaching some 30,000 students, accumulated over a decade. With parents' consent, the data was fed to the AI, and it learned to make decisions and offer suggestions just like a human supervisor. As the company hoped, all that expertise is now finally reaching those who once had no access to it.
That was Chen Mengfei reporting. We're at 29 past now. Beijing, thunder showers overnight. It's down to 10 degrees. Cloudy conditions and 22 for Friday. Shanghai will see a light rainfall and 14, followed by heavier rain and 17. Chongqing's cloudy tonight and tomorrow, a low 15, a high of 26. Nanchang will see heavy rainfall in the evening and 16 degrees, moderate rain and 18 tomorrow. Last is cloudy tonight and tomorrow, a low 5 and a high of 17. Elsewhere in Asia, Islamabad will be getting moderate rainfall and 18 degrees overnight, a high of 22 on Friday. It's time for a short break. So far this hour, the U.S. president's issued a televised address on the Iran war, offering threats but no clear timeline for the end of the conflict. European leaders are defending NATO after Trump said he might pull the U.S. out of the military alliance. And Thursday is World Autism Day, and experts in China explained how the country is helping people with the condition. Shane Bigham with you. Stay with us here on the Beijing Hour.
Shh, listen up. Can you hear the heartbeat of our world? It's vibrant and pulsating with the essence of life itself. From the stem of trees to the gurgle of rivers. From the silent strength of mountains to the icy whispers of glaciers. Even the solid ground beneath our feet. And right there, in the midst of all, beats the heart of humanity. What if those other heartbeats were to stop? Would ours keep on ticking?
Ever wondered what's actually going on in Africa through the perspective of an African? How are things really going between China and Africa? What's the narrative of this relationship? Well, get a perspective with China-Africa Talk. Hear from African diplomats, entrepreneurs, academics, Chinese natives, and more. Get on our wavelength every week to find out what's real with China-Africa Talk. Find us on your favorite podcast. We'll see you there.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host.
Shane Bigham with you on this Thursday. Still to come. In business, China's Commerce Ministry speaks on strengthening ties with the U.S. In sports, Shanghai ends its long drought in the Chinese Women's Volleyball League. In culture and entertainment, a holiday weekend in China could be a record setter at the box office. To contact us, you can email radio@cgtn.com or follow our X account @CGTNradio. But now with the check of the day's headlines, here's Tianlin.
Thank you, Shane. China says it is ready to work with Bahrain to help end conflict and restore stability in the Middle East. Foreign Minister Wang Yi made the remarks during a phone call with Bahrain's Abdulatif bin Rashid Al Zayani. Al Zayani briefed Wang on the latest regional developments, noting that Gulf countries are facing serious security challenges, including disruptions to navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. Wang reiterated China's consistent position of opposing aggression and promoting peace. He said China stands ready to work with Bahrain to help achieve long-term regional stability while safeguarding the legitimate rights and interests of developing countries, particularly small and medium-sized nations. The United Nations Trade and Development Agency reports a sharp decline in global shipping, with traffic through the Strait of Hormuz down 95%. The agency warns that global economic growth could slow to 2.6% this year, alongside falling stock markets and weakening currencies in developing nations. Meantime, UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric says humanitarian aid is still reaching Gaza despite heavy pressure on border crossings.
We want to see an end to the conflict. We want to see an end to civilians not being in the crossfire, but being the target in this conflict throughout the region.
Meanwhile, a forensic investigation into the death of 3 UN peacekeepers in recent days is underway, though officials caution the active combat zone poses serious risks to investigators. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva says the United States has fabricated claims to justify what he calls an unnecessary war against Iran. Lula rejected U.S. allegations that Iran was developing nuclear weapons, calling them a lie and warning that past conflicts, including the Iraq War, were also based on false pretexts. He added that war has never provided lasting solutions. Lula urged the United Nations Security Council to reflect rationally on the conflict, saying it is already affecting Brazil's economy through rising fuel costs. He noted that disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz are pushing up diesel prices, prompting the government to cut fuel taxes and tighten market oversight to protect low-income households. Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto has ordered residents in areas hit by Thursday's 7.4 magnitude earthquake to evacuate as soon as possible. The National Disaster Mitigation Agency is working with the armed forces, the police and regional governments to conduct the checks and evacuate residents. Authorities are urging the public to stay away from damaged buildings until they are declared safe. Officials say they are preparing follow-up measures based on emergency and recovery needs. NASA has launched its first crewed mission around the moon in over 50 years, marking a major step toward a future moon landing. The Artemis II rocket lifted off from Kennedy Space Center, carrying 4 astronauts, including the first woman, person of color, and non-U.S. citizen on the lunar mission. Commander Ray Wiseman reported a clear view of the moon shortly after liftoff. Jared Isaacman is the NASA administrator.
So after a brief 54-year intermission, NASA is back in the business of sending astronauts to the moon.
The 10-day journey will take the crew around the moon and back to Earth, marking the farthest human travel in space to date. The mission signals a new era of exploration as NASA aims to establish a long-term human presence on the lunar surface. And finally, Russia has accused Japan of using its new school textbooks to promote a sense of revanchism among the younger generation and to deny the outcomes of World War II. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova said the updated textbooks contain virtually no mention of war crimes committed by militarist Japan in the last century. She added that Japan has expanded its territorial claims against neighboring states, including Russia. Zakharova also says Tokyo is deliberately misleading young people, stripping them of historical memory and distorting their understanding of current geopolitical realities. The new textbooks are set to be introduced in Japan next year.
All right, thank you very much. That's Tian Lu with headlines. Coming up in business, China's Commerce Ministry speaks on strengthening ties with the U.S.
The Beijing Hour, your window on China and the rest of the world.
37 past now, and turning to business, here's Wang Ziheng.
Thank you, Shane. Stock markets on the Chinese mainland closed lower on Thursday. The Shanghai Composite was down nearly 0.7%. The Shenzhen component lost 1.6%. Oil field, engineering and forestry shares were among the top gainers. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index decreased more than 0.7%. Japan's Nikkei declined nearly 2.4%. The Chinese Commerce Ministry says China and the United States should make full use of their trade and economic consultations to foster a healthy and sustainable bilateral relationship. Spokesperson He Yadong says 6 rounds of consultations between the two countries have yielded a series of outcomes, injecting stability and certainty into bilateral ties and into the global economy as well. He urged both sides to strengthen dialogue, properly manage differences, and expand cooperation to promote healthy, stable, and sustainable development of bilateral ties. Responding to U.S. tech giants Meta's acquisition of Chinese AI startup Manners, the spokesperson says the Chinese government supports local companies in operational and technological cooperation with foreign counterparts as long as such actions and procedures comply with laws and regulations. For years, the biggest headache for many electric vehicle drivers has been the wait at the charging point. But Chinese EV maker BYD says it has changed all that. In March, the company launched what it calls flash charging technology. Wang Tianyu tested it out to find how fast it is.
How long does it take to fully charge an EV? It could be faster than topping up your phone. 9 minutes. That's all it takes for Chinese EV maker BYD's latest technology to charge a car. This new system uses high voltage power to break through the old limits of charging speed. It's a game changer for long trips.
It should be even faster in the summer, since the battery doesn't need time to warm up.
In the time it takes to drink a cup of coffee, your car will be ready to go for another 600 kilometers. Now it's 50% charged and there are 6 minutes left. Look how fast it is. How does it hit such speeds without crashing the grid? Well, the secret lies in these boxes. The energy storage facility works like a giant power bank. It stores electricity quietly during downtimes and pours it into your car when you plug in.
Our flash charging pile achieves a 10-fold improvement in power utilization compared to an ordinary public charging pile.
BYD expects to reach 20,000 flash charging stations by the end of this year. That means in urban areas, drivers can expect to find one every 5 kilometers. China now has more than 21 million charging infrastructure units, with a yearly increase of nearly 50%. This vast network supports the country's 40 million new energy vehicles.
There was Wang Jianyu reporting. For more on the EV market, Vivian Nunes spoke with Xie Peng, Associate Professor with Beijing Institute of Technology.
The recent rise in oil prices has attracted a lot of attention, putting travel costs and our reliance on fossil fuel once again in focus. What development opportunities do these latest price shocks offer EV makers and the new energy vehicle firms here in China?
Yes, I think this is a real opportunity for China's EV makers. The logic is very simple. When oil price goes up, the cost advantage of electric vehicles becomes much clearer. In China, electricity is still much cheaper than gasoline, so consumers can more easily see the savings in daily use. At the same time, China's new energy vehicle market is already very strong. In last year, the penetration rate exceeded 50%, which means consumers are already highly willing to accept EVs. EVs will become more attractive in many overseas markets as well. Since China is already a major explorer of new energy vehicles, this gives Chinese automakers a good chance to grow sales both in China and abroad.
That was Associate Professor Xie Peng with Beijing Institute of Technology on China's EV market. Tensions in the Middle East are putting pressure on global oil markets. Fuel prices are rising in import-dependent nations such as Thailand. However, demand for EVs is surging as drivers seek lower transportation costs, Lucita Salcao reports from the Bangkok International Motor Show.
The lines snake out kilometers onto the road, engines idle, patience wears thin. At some petrol stations, the pumps have already run dry. Nationwide, the price board only ticks up. Thailand, like much of Southeast Asia, sits on the front lines of global energy shocks. The country imports most of its fuel, so when prices surge abroad, they surge here fast. But the pressure building at petrol stations is finding an outlet elsewhere, in a surge of interest in alternatives.
As instability in the Middle East feeds into oil market uncertainty, Thai consumers are recalibrating. Fuel prices are no longer just a cost, they become a risk. And that risk is now a huge part of the buying decision.
At the Bangkok International Motor Show, Chinese electric vehicles dominate the floor. The mood this year is strikingly different. Electric vehicles are no longer a niche, they are front and center. Chinese automakers are flooding the market with new, competitively priced EV models, and buyers, rattled by rising fuel costs, are taking notice.
I think this will be a pain point for customers in their decision-making process. We expect growth to be above average.
Organizers expect over 1 million visitors, with dozens of brands showcasing new EVs and alternative energy models, a reflection of both industry ambition and shifting consumer demand.
The trend of EVs is already popular and in demand among consumers. However, with the current situation, I think it will be a significant driving force that makes people want to switch to EVs even more.
Consumers are doing the math. Fuel costs against electricity, monthly payments against long-term savings, uncertainty against something more fixed.
At first, I wasn't interested, but I recently became concerned because it's difficult to find places to refuel, and fuel is expensive. So I changed my mind and started looking at electric cars instead. I came here specifically to reserve one.
It would be better to switch to driving in EVs. It's becoming more common, and as you can see, since the war, oil prices are high, so EVs will help a lot.
On the floors of this exhibition hall, on booking sheets, at Government House as the Prime Minister arrives in his brand new electric ride. Uncertainty is pushing decisions and reshaping demand in real time.
That was Dusita Saukau in Thailand. Leading Chinese carriers, including Air China and China Southern Airlines, will raise fuel surcharges on domestic routes starting Sunday. For flights of 800 kilometers or less, the surcharge will be 60 yuan, just under $9. For routes longer than 800 kilometers, the surcharge will increase to 120 yuan per flight. If a ticket for a domestic route is purchased on or before Saturday, but the ticket is changed on or after Sunday, no extra charge will be applied based on the new rates. Currently, Chinese airlines levy a fuel surcharge of 10 yuan for domestic routes up to 800 kilometers and 20 yuan for those exceeding 800 kilometers. The Ehrenhot railway port on the China-Mongolia border handled a record high 1,145 freight train trips in the first quarter of the year. That was a 22% increase from last year. Cargo volumes on this key hub on the middle corridor of the China-Europe Railway Express also rose steadily. The port transported over 110,000 standard containers in the first 3 months, up 14.6%, and nearly 950,000 metric tons of goods, up nearly 20%. The China-Europe Railway network serves as a major platform for the Belt and Road Initiative. It consists of western, eastern, and middle corridors and has been expanding its reach across Eurasia in recent years. In January, a new route linking Russia's Solombac and Weizi in Shanxi province was launched via Ehrenhot, bringing the total number of routes to 75. The network now connects to more than 70 logistics hubs in over 10 countries, including Germany and Poland, while linking with most major China-Europe freight train departure cities nationwide.
All right, thank you very much. That's Wang Ziheng with Business. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in sports, Shanghai ends its long drought in the Chinese Women's Volleyball League.
Sideline Story brings you all things sports related. The hottest topics, latest events, juiciest stories, all with a very personal take. Subscribe to Sideline Story Podcast for heated sports discussions covering events that are happening in China and around the world.
47 past the hour. With sports now, here's Yang Guang.
Thank you, Shane. Shanghai has claimed its first Chinese Women's Volleyball League title in 25 years, sweeping Jiangsu 3-0. The victory sealed a 2-1 series win and the club's first championship since 2001. Head coach Chai Bin said the team was fully prepared.
I think today went fairly smoothly overall. Our mental and technical preparations were quite solid. The opponents also gave us a strong challenge. Both yesterday's and today's matches were really exciting, with a great level of intensity. The finals of the Chinese Volleyball League are clearly taking on more weight, and meaning the quality of play just keeps getting better.
Shanghai had a slow start, falling behind 9-3 in the opening set, but regrouped after a timeout and rallied to take it 25-23. They carried that momentum into the second set, breaking a 9-all tie with a strong defense and quick attacks to win 25-19. Shanghai stayed in control in the third, building an early lead and closing it out 25-19 to complete the sweep. Following the conclusion of the Chinese Women's Volleyball Super League, the Chinese Volleyball Association announced a 17-member roster for the team's first training camp. Most players from last year's squad, including Wu Mengjie, Zhang Zixuan, and Zhuang Yushan, will participate. Veterans like Zhu Ting and Wang Yuanyuan are also part of this initial phase. At the International Table Tennis Federation World Cup in Macau, Chinese paddler Wang Manyu has defeated Japan's Mima Ito 4-0 to reach the quarterfinals. Despite trailing 6-0 in the opening set, Wang recovered by improving her service returns. She came back to take the first game 11-9, then dominated the next 3 sets to seal the match. The win further extends Wang's dominance in the matchup, marking her 9th consecutive victory over Ito in major international competitions. In the NBA, Victor Wembanyama delivered another dominant performance, scoring 41 points for the second straight game. The San Antonio Spurs defeated the injury-hit Golden State Warriors 127-113, extending their winning streak to 10 games. Wembanyama made an immediate impact, scoring 10 of his team's first 14 points in the opening 4 minutes. He finished 16 of 22 from the field, marking his fourth 40-point outing of the season. The Spurs improved to 58-18, winning 15 of their last 16 games as they continue to chase the top-seeded Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference, now just 2 wins away. Stephen Curry missed his 26th game for the Warriors due to a right knee injury. First-round bids for teams in the new NBA Europe have concluded, with several billion-dollar commitments. Over 120 investors, including private equity funds, sovereign wealth funds, and high-net-worth individuals, have expressed interest. However, launching the league by fall next year remains a complex process. The NBA plans to establish teams in 12 permanent cities, including Berlin, London, Madrid, Paris, and Rome. A meeting between the NBA and the EuroLeague is scheduled for the end of the month. In football, the U20 Women's Asian Cup kicked off in Thailand, with China securing a 3-0 win over Vietnam in their opening match. Forward Chen Lu scored twice in the first half, giving China a 2-0 lead. In the 77th minute, Zheng Yujia sealed victory with a follow-up shot. China is in a group with Vietnam, Bangladesh, and Thailand, and will face Bangladesh next on Saturday. The fourth and final phase of ticket sales for the 2026 World Cup has begun, offering over 3 million tickets for matches in the US, Mexico, and Canada. Tickets are available on first-come, first-served basis until the tournament ends on July 19th. More than 3 million tickets have already sold in the first 3 phases, including over 1 million through the random selection draw. And finally, France has returned to number 1 in the FIFA World Rankings for the first time in nearly 8 years, following a strong March international window. Friendly wins over Brazil and Colombia lifted Le Bleu above Spain and Argentina, reclaiming top spot for the first time since September 2018 in a tightly contested top 3. Spain slipped to second after a goalless draw with Egypt, while world champion Argentina dropped to third. England stays fourth and Portugal rises to fifth ahead of Brazil after a win and a draw. The rest of the 10 remains unchanged, with the Netherlands, Morocco, Belgium, and Germany holding their positions.
All right, thank you very much. That's Yang Guang with sports. You're listening to the Beijing Hour, and coming up in culture and entertainment, a holiday weekend in China could be a record setter at the box office.
From north to south, east to west, people in China are chasing their dreams and leaving their mark. Want to know how they beat the odds and made a difference? Footprints brings you the true life stories of their journeys.
53 past the hour now. Turning to culture and entertainment. China's film industry is set for a record-breaking Qingming Festival release with nearly 20 new films. According to domestic ticketing platform Maoyan, pre-sale ticket revenue has already exceeded 42 million yuan, or over $6 million as of Wednesday. Top early releases include It's Okay, the Super Mario Galaxy movie, and Game of Identity. The diverse lineup spans family dramas, comedy, suspense, and animation. The Qingming Festival holiday runs from Saturday to Monday. The China-Kazakhstan Year of Cultural Exchanges is kicked off in Beijing. Dignitaries, business leaders, and cultural representatives gathered at the China National Opera House for a vibrant opening ceremony featuring traditional music and dance performances. Shen Li has more.
From the ancient Silk Road to the Belt and Road Initiative, China and Kazakhstan shared a deep friendship, and tonight's opening ceremony marks a new chapter in that everlasting bond. In the lobby of the Opera House, Kazakh musicians and performers in traditional attire captivate the audience with a pop-up performance, offering a vivid display of the country's rich ethnic heritage.
We Kazakh girl wear only this color, like red, yellow, and other light colors.
At the opening performance, Chinese and Kazakh artists take to the stage, showcasing a diverse array of artistic forms, from ethnic and pop music to dance, instrumental performances, and fashion shows.
The piece I'm bringing today is a fusion work inspired by the folk songs of northern Shanxi in China. Audiences will hear the Chinese erhu blended with Western modern rock. Choosing this piece for the opening ceremony reflects what I witnessed during rehearsals. Artists from both countries engaging in cross-cultural collaborations through music and dance.
The song I'm singing is called The Cloud of Hometown. I found it online, and it instantly felt familiar to me. My Chinese teacher and I listened to the original recording many times and practiced together, working hard to deliver the best performance possible.
The opening performance kicks off a year-long celebration of shared heritage and creativity, featuring everything from special performances to thematic exhibitions to joint archaeological art symposiums. The diverse lineup promises to deepen ties and forge new connections between the two nations.
That was Shen Li reporting. Beijing will highlight China's rich musical heritage this month with the third edition of the Spring of Chinese Music Festival, running until April 25th. That festival will feature 25 concerts. These performances will take place at the National Center for the Performing Arts and the Beijing Performing Arts Center. The lineup includes 13 renowned conductors, 27 orchestras, and over 80 master performers from China and abroad. Since its debut in 2022, the festival has become a key platform for promoting and exchanging Chinese music. The Shenzhou 21 crew, currently on China's space station, has introduced an online art exhibition featuring 80 paintings by teenagers. The artworks themed Role Models in My Heart were selected from over 15,000 submissions across the country. The exhibition, launched in July of last year, marks the fifth painting exhibition held aboard the space station. The 16th Beijing International Film Festival will open on April 16th, with its flagship Tiantan Awards competition continuing to draw global attention. Organizers received submissions of over 1,800 films from more than 130 countries and regions this year. They've also announced the first batch of shortlisted films featuring 12 titles, including 4 Chinese productions and 8 international ones. 57 past the hour. Beijing getting thunder showers overnight. It's down to 10 degrees. Cloudy and 22 on Friday. Shanghai will see a light rainfall and 14 overnight. The rain picks up a little heavier tomorrow with a high of 17. Chongqing will be cloudy tonight and tomorrow, a low of 15 and a high of 26. Nanchang will see heavy rainfall and 16 this evening, followed by moderate rain and 18 degrees. Lhasa will be cloudy tonight and tomorrow, a low of 5 and a high of 17. And that's it for this edition of the Beijing Hour. Making news today, the U.S. president issued a televised address on the Iran war, offering threats but no clear timeline for an end to the conflict. And European leaders are defending NATO after Trump said he might pull the U.S. out of the military alliance. On behalf of the staff, this is Shane Bigham in the Chinese capital, hoping you'll join us for the next edition of the Beijing Hour and open a window to the world together.
Find the Beijing Hour at precisely 6 p.m. Beijing time. We meet you on podcast and on air every weekday. The Beijing Hour, your window on China and the rest of the world.
He can't live without the Yellow River in his eyes.
The Yellow River is so noble and elegant.
Both my grandpa and dad made a living from the river.
Would you like to move away from the Yellow River?
I don't think I will. I love it so much.
The Yellow River, the second longest river in China, is regarded as a shaping force in the history, economy and culture of northern China. Today, about 100 million people live within its water basin, making up nearly 9% of the country's population. How is climate change felt at its headwaters, and what are the locals doing to cope with it? What are the descendants of the boatmen doing? What has kept some people from leaving their home village by the river, and what has drawn others back? Could the fading fishing community revive in the time of digital transformation? From 2021 to 2024, our reporters visited the upper, middle and lower reaches of the Yellow River, talked to the herders, farmers, boatmen, fishermen and eco-activists who share a close bond with the river, and present their stories in pictures, podcasts and videos, all in our 12-part series, The Yellow River Mosaic, available only on CGTN Radio.